About April. Hello. Hey, how are you doing this morning? Today is the 7th of April, 2019. And I just want to welcome you into my presence, welcome you into this safe space, welcome you into my little container on YouTube where we can commune together, gaze into one another's eyes together, and just be at peace and, sort of connect. So I hope you're doing well. Today is Wednesday. And I think it's the second week of April. And it's almost already mid-April. And the weather has been really shaping up lately. It's been quite beautiful outside. And I'm looking forward to a weekend, this coming weekend, that is, well, spectacular. Why spectacular? Spectacular because of all the flowers that will be blooming on the ground, on the hills. Spectacular because of just, we're really so lucky to live here on the Central Coast where the air is clean. We don't have to worry about smog. We're right next to the ocean, 10 miles out of 10 miles from the ocean shore. So upwind of us is essentially the largest ocean in the world. So the air pollution that comes from that direction is extremely minimal. So our air quality is high all the time. It's just blisteringly high. Well, I should say that it's just really high air, really good air quality. So glad to have that. And living on the Central Coast, we've got lots of sunshine nearly all year round. And so, man, this weekend's going to be great. It's going to be great partly because I am going to be attending a music festival all weekend long, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll see how long I can stand it. But it's like full on, like 18-hour days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I need to think a little bit about what I want to wear. I'm going to basically have to probably select an entire wardrobe. So let's see what's going on in my life right now that you would be interested in, Emily. Well, I don't know. I'm going to night school. That's still happening tonight. In fact, I'll be doing some welding for a couple hours down at Allen Hancock College campus in Santa Maria. And I'll be doing SMAG welding, which is shielded metal arc welding. Oh, SMAW. Where do I get these acronyms? I live in an acronym city. Let me tell you, there are acronyms flying all over the place in my life. It's kind of funny. It's great that we use this shorthand. It's so convenient to use. I mean, human beings are so clever. We can think of ways they're almost like a mnemonic, right? To help us understand the nouns and the words that we sling every day. I love these mnemonics. We're so bright, so smart. But they get a little bit out of control sometimes. There's a lot of acronyms, and especially in highly specialized professions. The more specialized you get in your profession, the more acronyms there are, and so, I mean, it's good. It's actually a very positive side to have lots of acronyms around, because it means that surrounding you are professionals who are committed to the material that they're working on, and they're speaking a language. It's kind of like Spanish or Chinese, or I mean Mandarin Chinese, or French. We're all speaking our highly technical language. This is like the language of math, the language of engineering, the language of organizations, the language of contracts, right? And it's great to be in that kind of environment. And that's true at work and at school. Yeah. I was thinking today about just how amazing people are, just people in general. You know, I live out my day every day doing the best I can, and everybody else is pretty much doing the same thing too. I think that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of grit, you know, persistence. It takes a lot of patience and calm. I kind of think of the human brain as a work in progress. I don't think nature has finished the project of assembling a brain that's flawless. Human brains are a work in progress, and that work has really been progressing for the last 3.5 billion years. And let me tell you, it needs a little bit more work. you know Everyone's brain, we really have like Neanderthal brains. These are brains that have evolved over the centuries and millennia, and they're quite ancient. The neurons that we use, they are, they're really just, they're giving us the experience of reality that they do, right, through our consciousness. And I'm not sure these brains have been well adapted to live in cities and watch TV all day and eat buffets of food in cafeterias. Our brains are really meant for the savannas of Africa, where we, walk long distances and hunt our prey for our meals. And, our bodies are really meant to be out in nature all day, walking around, doing tasks like fetching water and gathering resources and like food and building our homes, things like that. I don't think we're meant to just sort of stay in our apartments or in our workplaces under fluorescent lights all day, sitting at our desks. And so our brain is adapting. It's adapting to this new environment. It's a new environment. It's such a new environment. I mean, can you imagine the difference between the environment of people who live, say, in nature, surviving, and then people who live in cities and in their homes and in their towns? I mean, that's a big difference. I mean, for a brain, brains are always on the lookout for threats from their environment. I think of human beings as sort of like birds, how we're always looking, we're always looking around us, our eyes are darting from here to here, through the saccades. And we're always curious about what's going on around us. These are habits that we've developed, when we were hunter gatherers, our brains are well adapted to that. The kind of living that we do today inside of our apartments, sitting on our couches, this couch-based living is a lot different from the savannah-based living. So I gotta hand it to our brains for figuring it, if we're doing okay. But I think that our brains are kind of tripping over themselves right now. I've been looking at some statistics in newspaper articles and on the internet talking about the prevalence of things like mental illnesses, depression, anxiety. There's a lot of suicidal ideation going on out there. People are really struggling. There's a lot of people struggling with mental illness out there, and those numbers are growing. And I've also been hearing stories about how school children, particularly millennials and Generation Z, are really struggling with mental illness as they're growing up, as they're growing into young adults in the middle school and high school ages. And that is concerning to me. My heart goes out to all those kids who are struggling. And I just want to let you know that I'm here as a resource to help you through any kind of challenges you might have with your thinking process. I personally am an enthusiast of the human brain and the mind and ideas and thoughts and the inner voice, and your inner eye, your ability to visualize. One of the things that has really helped me is a diligent study of psychology, and I research a lot of different therapies that are available to people who are struggling, just really out of curiosity. For me, how I benefit is that it improves my overall happiness. I find that the quality of my life is highly dependent on the quality of my thoughts. And so I'm always working to improve the quality of my thinking. So I'm on the lookout for informal fallacies, and I'm focused on learning new techniques for thinking. Like, I've been focusing on negotiation and communication skills lately, empathy and compassion, but I continue to be interested in things like motivational interviewing, disciplines related to counseling, acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's essentially as a shining star out there of accomplishment. Human beings have assembled an amazing array of thinking tools in cognitive behavioral therapy, well worth looking at, well worth studying, and making a part of your mental toolbox, where you can help solve your own problems. It's really worth checking out. So I would, if you would like any recommendations from me about books that I've found useful, I'd be more than happy to suggest any textbooks or self-help books that I think might be useful to you. Anyway, I think it's really one of the keys of being happy. It's important to sort of think about how your mind processes information. I think that's key to happiness. Absolutely. Speaking of keys to happiness, let me just throw out a few ideas about what I think the keys to happiness are. Why not? You and I are here now we might as well broach that subject. So I think I'll just make a running list of it. Here's it. Number one, I think one of the most important things that you can do to maintain happiness is exercise. There's something about positivity that requires energy. There's something about relationships, the relationship with yourself, the relationships you have with others that require activity, that requires energy. In fact, a lot of positive traits like courage and confidence almost require energy to be as a fuel to make it possible for a person to be confident. I mean, I guess it's possible for a low energy person to be confident. And also, I assume that it is possible for a low energy person to be optimistic and positive. But I think it's a whole lot easier if you have a high energy, if you have a lot of, if and exercise is what enables you to have high energy, strong, high levels of mental energy to tackle problems, high levels of physical energy to tackle problems. And exercise is what enables that. So I think really maybe number one on the list of what it takes to be a happy person is exercise. Absolutely. Exercise can also help stave off anxiety and depression, particularly depression, but it also helps anxiety too. So I would think that exercise is probably a foundational practice for being happy. Another practice is focus on personal growth, developing meaning. And that can mean learning about the disciplines and subdisciplines in psychology, learning about techniques to enhance and improve your thinking skills. I was talking about acceptance and commitment therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. I mean, there's so many therapies out there, and it's worth investigating a few different kinds to get different perspectives. And that'll give you a nice sort of rounded out view of the state of the art when it comes to maintaining high quality thinking skills. So exercise, a focus on growth. What else? I think one thing that's important is a focus on relationships. There's something about the human beings and how we're social animals. Now, one can be an introvert and be quite happy and healthy, and that's fantastic. But I think even having the more skilled you are in communication and relationships, the better. And because that can help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve. It also can help you when it comes to striving for things that you value. It can actually help you, act in ways that you value too. So, I would say focus on communication and your relationships. There's something about relationships and relationship in general, which human beings are really, for a lot of people, human beings make or break quality of life. I mean, relationships make or break quality of life. And so that's why I'm suggesting that it's important to look at when it comes to your relationships or when it comes to your happiness levels. Okay, what else? What else is critical to, I think I might have made some notes about this on my smartphone a little while back. Let me refer to those real quick. Well, gosh, looks like I'm not finding it right now. Maybe I'll find it. Aha, here we go. Ah, ooh, here's something. Yes, self amusement and humor. So I am really realizing now that happiness is really quite strongly a function of how well you can amuse yourself in the moment. It's sort of what is self amusement? Self amusement is cracking jokes while you are talking to yourself. It's cracking jokes about what's going on in the moment with you when you're alone. Somehow it's you can also be with other people and be in a self-amusing state. What is self-amusement? Self-amusement is it's the ability to crack fun at what's going on in the world. It's an ability to sort of be experimental, go off script, so to speak. It's an ability. It's like a self amusement is like a personal curiosity. It's like a curiosity in the self and in the present moment. Self amusement is about. It's not just about finding humor in the present. I mean, you could be self amusing as a scientist, focused on like the facts of your external reality, and or you could be self-amusing in a philosophical way where you're continually musing about purpose and ethics and knowledge, and how epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge, and you could be focused on a lot of philosophical, whether it's ethics or theory of knowledge or mind body problems, folk questions about consciousness. Self amusement goes really deep. It's about, a person could be focused on geology, the geology around them, or the biology around them. Self amusement can be about a focus on plants, or self amusement is like a brain that is continually occupied with itself. And I think, and it occupied in itself in a way that sort of enhances curiosity and artistic creativity. It's like, what is self amusement? Self amusement is sort of a mind occupied with itself somehow, and also the external world. And it's occupied in a way, where there's like an undercurrent of passion and curiosity, right? So I think self amusement is, in fact, me talking here on YouTube is a form of self amusement, where I'm enjoying how my brain trips from concept to concept in conversation with another person, or maybe not with anyone else, not with anyone at all. That's self amusement. So what's happening right now is self amusement for me. So I'm serving as a model to you, as a good example to you, hopefully, about what self amusement is. And I think it really is critical to happiness. And if you can sort of combine self amusement with humor, sort of a lightheartedness, a joyfulness, I think that goes a long way toward being happy. And here's why, really. Human beings, at least certainly today and certainly in the past, spend a lot of time alone, right? And that is what the future is going to be like for certain. People will continue to, ultimately, we are all alone. I mean, it's an existential fact, separation of minds, right? We're all separated from each other necessarily. It's just the way the world has been put together. And so being relatively easy to self-amuse, you'll be able to enjoy those stretches of time when you're alone, or maybe even when you're with people. I mean, It is entirely possible to be alone and amongst a crowd at the same time. You know, it's just an existential fact about being human. And the better that you can cope with that kind of environment, sort of like the separateness which exists existentially, uh, the better off you'll be, the happier you'll be, the less that you'll fall into periods of boredom and negativity and hopelessness and helplessness, right? See what I'm getting at? There we go. So, yeah, humor and self amusement. Let's see what else. Aha. So, I think another important aspect of happiness is music and movement. And I basically mean dance. But of course, this is highly linked to exercise too. But there's something about movement and our pleasure centers in our brain. I happen to think, and it might be erroneous, but movement and dancing have a lot to do with our pleasure centers in our brain. That's why exercise is so satisfying, partly. It's because I used to recognize that there was a part of the brain, in fact, like the cerebellum. I think it might be the cerebellum. Cerebellum and pleasure centers of the brain are tightly linked somehow. There's something about movement that is satisfying, I mean, deeply satisfying to the human organism. And if you think about it, I mean, in terms of an evolutionary behavior, if you're an organism from a fitness, from an evolutionarily fit perspective, in terms of you and in your environment, you really do want to move around a lot. They're having an incentive to move around and search for food, forage for resources, I think can be really helpful. So I can imagine the brain has certain mechanisms in place that advocate movement, and I think we get rewarded in subtle ways for moving. And music is really helpful too. There's some connection between some rhythmic patterns that our aural system picks up. I think there's really a strong connection between those rhythmic patterns and emotion. And I know music can be quite instrumental in helping people live happier lives. Heck, I'm going to be going to a music festival this weekend for 3 days, all day long, for 3 days. And I already know in advance I'm going to have a great time, mainly because I'm going to be moving a lot. It's that movement which is key. So yeah, music and movement, definitely a pillar of happiness. And there is one other thing. I've recently come to be aware of something called appreciative inquiry. I read a book about it. Now, this could be just another aspect of learning how to improve the quality of thinking through cognitive behavioral therapy. Appreciative inquiry, really all that is imagine there are 4 different levels of ways to use your mind. At the top, there are open questions about things that you love, things that you like, things that you appreciate. Here at this level, there are statements. It's a simple statements. These are questions up here, statements about the way things are in a positive light. Statements of fact, declarative sentences. So open questions about what you love in the world, sort of a generative type question asking. And then this is a statement making about what's good in the world. And then There's a generative sort of generative questions about what's wrong with the world. This is about criticism and what's the problem. A lot of people are stuck in this kind of thinking. What's going on? What's happening? What's the problem? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? A lot of judgment thinking comes out of this. This is actually quite useful, but it's very easy to get stuck in this realm of this mode of thinking. And then there are declarative sentences about what's wrong in the world, right? What is the problem? Statements about basically identification of the things that are wrong. This is the questions about what might be wrong, and this is the identification of what's wrong. And this is fine too. It's important to know what's wrong in the world, but it can also be, if there's an overfocus on what's wrong, it can also be quite a dead end and limit activity. But anyway, I really appreciate these 4 categories of thinking. I think it's important to stay up here, always asking open questions about what's good in the world, about what you love in the world, and then making positive statements, identifying what those things are. So not just the inquiry, but the identification as well, about what's good in the world. And that's kind of an interesting. So anyway, that's positive inquiry in a nutshell. I know I did read the book about a month ago or 2 months ago, so I have to go over my notes. But that is a point in the book that really stuck out. And the reason why I think that that's important to happiness. Well, first of all, acknowledging those 4 thought processes is important to happiness. And why do I think that's important? Well, it's about enhancing the quality of your thinking. It's about not getting stuck in a certain kind of thinking that leads you into a dead end. And so that's why I appreciate appreciative inquiry. What's great about that sort of set of concepts is that, it can help you shift gears. If you want to shift gears, it can help you shift gears to come up with positive, generative, open questions about what's good in your life. It's about perspective making, right? It's about reframing, right? Anyway, so I think those elements are important. Let me just go through each one. One of them was exercise, self-amusement, humor, appreciative inquiry, study of thinking errors, and the study of thinking errors, music and movement. And was there anything else? I think that might have been it. But I tell you, if you can do those 5 things, you will set yourself up for happiness, long-term happiness. Of course, that doesn't encapsulate everything that a person can do to be happy. I did say exercise, and in a way that implies taking care of your health, right? That implies brushing your teeth, and it implies eating healthy and drinking plenty of fluids, healthy fluids like water. And, there are a lot of sub-tier implications in the things that I talk about, like, in order to focus on the quality of your thoughts and continuously improve the quality of your thoughts through studying cognitive behavioral therapy, that implies your ability to read. Right? It implies an education that teaches you to appreciate such things. It implies a lot of things. Dancing and movement implies that you're not necessarily a quadriplegic, right? It implies that you live your life in a way that is physically safe in an environment that is not a war zone, right? And that you're around people where movement and dancing and music is appreciated. There are certain societies that have, through cultural mores and religious ideals, have banned music, right? Well, gosh, you may want to try to stay out of those societies if if at least that aspect of being happy is important to you, right? Music and movement. So anyway. Whew. So, okay, so I might as well talk about the title of this video, right? It always takes me a good 35 minutes, 40 minutes to warm up to talk about the actual subject that this video is about. So the actual subject that this video is about is what was my favorite subject in school and why. So this is kind of interesting. So I guess it's shifted over the years. But I guess when I started out in grade school, and I'm talking about second, third, fourth, and fifth grades, my favorite subject was PE. I'll tell you, I would guess that my favorite subject was PE. I love physical education, and it was so fun. I have vivid memories about playing sports with my friends, right? I'd play Nerf football with my friends, basketball with my friends. I'd play, did I say football? Yeah, football, like two-hand touch football and flag football, and play soccer, and we'd run and play on the playgrounds. And I've got a lot of memories about doing that when I was a kid. Yeah, so that was a subject that I enjoyed when I was a kid. I rode my bike a lot. I played marbles, right, with my friends, and did a lot of walking around. You know, for me, my youth was about exercise and exploring new places. It was fun. For me, my youth was about fun. And I still have a really deep, visceral sense of what that was like. And it's probably could be romanticized to some extent. But I remember just having fun as a youth. So I guess another subject that I really enjoyed was art when I was a kid. I remember making a film, doing using like animation. I drew pictures. I loved the arts and crafts when I was a kid. And then I really didn't get into science until 6th or 7th grade. Then I started really getting into science. I was like, I think the thing that I really started getting into science when I was, I think, in 6th grade. And I started learning about the laws of thermodynamics. For some reason, I don't know, this subject really intrigued me. This idea of natural laws that were unbreakable. And it was inspiring to me to know about it. It was as if, this was a law that wasn't subjective. This was a law that everyone could agree on. I grew up pretty religious, where, there were laws that had like tons of exceptions, right? Even like thou shalt not kill, then there was like, oh, well, if you're in a situation such as this, you can go ahead and do it. You can go ahead and kill if you want, or something like that, through self-defense. Or, people could say, oh, well, it's, those ethical rules I noticed as a kid were largely subjective. And so I was seeking out some kind of certainty, and I found it in the laws of thermodynamics. And so I studied like the first law, second law, third law, the 0th law of thermodynamics, or maybe there's the 4th law. I forget what they were. But I wrote in 6th grade, I guess maybe it was 7th grade. I wrote a paper on the laws of thermodynamics, and that got me interested in science. Then I had an amazing science teacher. Her name was Miss Lee, and she taught us chemistry and basically our science class. And we learned about atoms, electrons, neutrons, protons. And we talked about the various shells, right? The S shell, the P shell of the atom. And I was just blown away by it. So science really started coming to the fore in my mind around 6th or 7th grade. Probably 7th grade was when it really got seeded into my mind as something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Although I didn't know it then, it was just something that was interesting to me. And then 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, mostly through high school, my focus was on literature and reading and writing. That's what caught my attention. It was the reading and writing, my literature classes. Believe it or not, my focus on science, it was still high in my chemistry class and in some of my math classes, which I enjoyed. For example, geometry. I really liked geometry, and I was doing fine in algebra class. So science and math components were there, but my real focus was on English. Like I remember reading Moby Dick, reading Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, reading a lot of books that really did inspire me as a kid. You know, as a high school student, I was really into English. And I found that that English was rather easy for me in the sense that I enjoyed it. I didn't actually think that grammar was easy for me. Grammar was not easy. I did not catch on to that. I didn't necessarily have a passion for grammar, but I did have an interest in reading. So it's kind of interesting. I did adequate. I did okay in my science and math classes, but really my attention was on my English classes. So then came the time when I had to decide what to major in college. And it really wasn't a choice. Science was going to be it. I mean, it was definitely something that I thought I could possibly do. I wasn't particularly good at it. Like I wasn't a genius at it, but I had a deep passion for it. It was an undeniable passion. And there was another aspect to it too. That passion was reinforced by the fact that I thought that I could make money in a job, working somehow in some kind of science related field, whether it was engineering or. I also kind of had a sense that I already knew really early that if I chose a really hard subject, a subject that other people didn't do or didn't want to do, then I would be better off. I kind of knew that. I kind of thought, if I chose something really tough that very few people will be interested in, I might be able to stand out in that field. Because, at the time, as a kid, I think I had a lot of grit. I was really focused. And I could study. And in fact, in my first and second year of college, I did just that. I studied a lot. I studied really hard. I think I did pretty okay in my classes. I think I did really okay. I really studied hard freshman and sophomore years of college. For me, college was a privilege to attend. I was the first one to go to college in my family, the very first. And it was like, and I was sort of happy to leave my childhood home and be out on my own and have a taste of freedom. And that was really, I felt like an adult, right? Going to school on my own with my friends, in control of my time for the first time. I decided that I didn't want to go to church on a regular basis when I made that transition from high school to college, to the displeasure of my parents, particularly my dad. But I was, I'm really thankful that I had that college experience, and that I learned a lot in those first 2 years of college. And I was really grateful, so grateful that I had something to do after high school. I can imagine there were a lot of kids who just sort of didn't have anything to do after high school. They were trying to make it up, right? Not everyone went to college. Some kids went to go find a job, right? Which is fine, which is great. I mean, I felt really privileged to even have the chance. I got a presidential scholarship from the university, and I was away from home for the first time. For the very first time, I was away from home. I just turned 18 years old. And so I was free as a bird. And it felt great because the fact is, when I was in high school, I had a lot of energy and I did feel constrained, which is normal. I mean, for a teenager, certainly, I did feel constrained. I felt restricted, and I didn't know. I was longing for freedom as a teenager, and when I got it, it was just so complete, and that it was almost surprising. And I just I loved the newfound freedom that I had. Yeah. So those first 2 years of college were wonderful. I mean, I had a blast. And when I say blast, I don't mean that I was partying all the time. Far from it. In fact, I did a lot of studying. Physics was my major. I took a lot of science classes, chemistry, biology, then chemistry lab, biology lab, mathematics. I was taking calculus. I took 4 semesters of calculus in college. So I was working hard. I was taking computer science. It was a tough schedule, but I think I did a fantastic fantastic job my first 2 years of college. My next few years of college, not so much. I was able to hit the books for those first 2 years, and then the next 2 years, things started. I started struggling a little bit. Here's the thing. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what happened. But I began to loosen up a little bit my junior and senior years in college. And I would call it like a mild depression. I was kind of not thriving. So it was actually kind of not good. And I actually did change schools from New Mexico Tech to the University of New Mexico, which was great. I was closer to home, which was nice, closer to family. I was in a bigger city. It's a lot more exciting. That transition was really important for me, to go from New Mexico Tech to University of New Mexico. That was such a relief. There was something about the change in environment, something about going to a new school, which was stimulating to me. I really needed a change. Oh, and I also got to live in the dorm rooms. Oh man, that was really a wonderful thing. Let me tell you, Emily, when you go to college, I hope you get to experience the dorm room experience, because I did when I was a kid, and it was really valuable to me. I loved hanging out with all my friends. And here's the thing about me. I'm an extrovert. All right. I need social contact. And when I start to isolate myself, things start going south real fast. Um, that's just something about me. I I'm a social animal, a social creature, and I really need sort of the companionship of others, right? The partnership of others. For me, that's how I get along in the world, right? And I think for some reason, as a student at New Mexico Tech, I was isolating myself a little bit. And I really needed some kind of life change to get me back into the groove again, get me back relating with others, not relating with just some other people, but relating with a lot of other people. And for me, that energizes me. It gives me strength and power and passion and energy. And there's just something about me relating to other people that gives me energy and stimulates my brain. Being isolated does the opposite. So that was a really good transition to University of New Mexico, and I needed it. Yeah. So, but the question was, what subjects did I enjoy the most? So, yeah, I was all into science and math the first 2 years. And then I started widening out when I went to the University of New Mexico. I started widening out into psychology and philosophy, namely philosophy. So at the University of New Mexico, I did get an additional scholarship, philosophy scholarship, which I loved. I loved just having it. And I loved studying my philosophy classes. And I became just really focused on philosophy, learning as much as I could about the philosophy of mind, about the philosophy of knowledge, about ethics, and just about basic philosophy. I just loved it. And I did change my major from physics to philosophy. But then I kind of realized that philosophy, at least for me, I couldn't envision having any kind of real paying job in the world of philosophy. So I ended up changing my major back to physics again. But it was sure nice to have that break. I think I might have just been overloaded on science classes and math classes the first couple of years of college. So it was nice for me to get a break. And in fact, when I was at the University of New Mexico, that's when I started taking a lot of dance classes. I took country western music dance class. I took a salsa dance class. I took all kinds of dance classes. We were dancing waltz, and I even took dance classes out of school, which was really nice. I still have very, very fond memories about my country western dance classes. Oh, I wish I could go back to doing that. In fact, one thing that I did is that I would take a country western dance class, and there was another session of dance classes that they just needed partners for. They needed some extra bodies in that class. And I asked the teachers if I could just hang out in that class too, and sort of, and they let me do it. So I was actually taking 2 country western dance classes. I was dancing like 4 or 5 days a week. It was awesome. It was awesome, man. I think I was dancing 5 days a week, country western dance, which for a kid like me was amazing. Not only was I an extrovert, but I was enjoying learning to dance with a group of other fellow dance enthusiasts. So I had a great time. Yeah. So I guess, so the subject that was most interesting to me in my early college years was math and science. And the subjects that were most interesting to me in my latter years of college were country western dance and philosophy. So as you could tell, just to survive and thrive, I had to loosen up a little bit. Eventually, I did get my degree in physics. So, but those were my favorite subjects in school. That's them. So I took you from grade school to middle school to high school through early college and late college. And those are the subjects that intrigued me at the time. And that that's a lot of change. It sort of speaks to the kinds of transitions that I had when I was a kid, right? They were dramatic. They went from the hardcore sciences to the arts. They went from sports to philosophy. Those are serious ranges of interest. It's not like I had a single interest. I didn't focus like a laser on one interest throughout my childhood. There were a lot of interests. And, in a way today, that is also how I live my life. I do all kinds of things. In fact, these days I take Allen Hancock College classes based on what appears to me the most unlikely class for me to take. I take classes that challenge me. And this welding class really challenges me. It's not my kind of class at all. I'm not that familiar or that good with working with my hands. I'm more of a conceptual, abstract thinker, right? And it's just weird for me to be in a welding class. And, I need that. I need that novelty. I kind of need that change, that difference. It's meaningful to me. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video. I hope that you have a fantastic day today. Today's Wednesday. I'm going to hit the gym today. I'm going to hit the welding shop today. And it's going to be a really long day, and I've got a lot of work to do at my workplace. I've also got to do some thinking about what I'm going to be doing this weekend at the music festival. So I hope you have an amazing week. I know that I guess spring break is next week for you. So, hey, maybe we can do something together. I'd be totally up to that. We could go have dinner, go have breakfast one of these days. I could tell you about my experience at the music festival, and maybe you could tell me about how school's working out for you and what your plans for summer might be. So I'll talk to you later, girl. I want you to know that I love you dearly, and I'm absolutely committed to our relationship. And I hope you have a wonderful day today, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.